West of Seattle, Washington, I found myself hopping on this 2008 Suzuki B-King on the Olympic Peninsula. I had purchased this motorcycle 6 months prior to this video, and this was the very first time I ever pulled the clutch on it. I have to give thanks to Lynn for having picked up the motorcycle and let it take up some space in his garage for those 6 months. While I was staying in Washington, working on my little cabin in the woods, Justin and Cleanan stopped by and were on their way to Port Townsend and invited me to follow them. So I took up their offer, jumped on the B-King, and followed them over. Washington State Road 20 from 101 to Port Townsend, Washington. It's a beautiful little twisty road for a little ways that you get these little peekaboo glimpses of Discovery Bay along the way. It's just a really nice, relaxing, beautiful ride. If you were staying anywhere in the area like Port Angeles or Sequim, this would make a great early morning destination ride to head into Port Townsend and have breakfast at the Bayview restaurant looking over the water after a gorgeous ride. Getting into Port Townsend, if you're hungry, I mentioned the Bayview restaurant, but there's also some really good mom and pop style pizza places that you can eat, and a bunch of little knick-knack shops downtown in the buildings with all its cool old architecture. You've got the ferry terminal that's right there in that area where you can head over to Whidbey Island, and in Port Townsend you have Fort Worden, which is what you see here. Movie buffs might recognize some of the buildings and the general area of Port Townsend in the movie An Officer and a Gentleman. Coming up on our right hand side here, you can see the camping area in Fort Worden, offering RV spaces, and you are basically right on the water, so the views are pretty awesome. Coming up in the background, you'll see the lighthouse where I proposed to my wife many moons ago on the beach. Leaving off of the Port Townsend ride, we are going to take you further west out past Port Angeles, where Highway 101 takes you to Highway 112 and makes a loop around Lake Crescent, coming back on Highway 101. And it is absolutely one of my favorite scenic rides, as well as one of the more entertaining rides that I know of. There is a darker side to Highway 112. One, in the fact that over the last few years, the very heavy rains that have ensued have done a lot to destroy the conditions of the road in some sections where the ground shifts considerably underneath. And the other way is many motorcyclists come out here very unprepared for some of these very sharp curves, or get distracted, and unfortunately the outcome is many times very bleak and grim for those who wipe out on their motorcycle. And then there's the brighter side of Highway 112. There are some really nice stretches of road where you can really enjoy a nice spirited ride, as well as the overall beautiful scenery. In the warmer summer months, you may see a pack of 20 or 30 sport motorcycles on this particular stretch of road, making their way out to take advantage of the copious amount of curvy sections of road. If you leave out of Port Angeles and head out off Highway 101 and make the loop taking Highway 112 and then hitting 113 back to Highway 101, that will bring you back into Port Angeles around Lake Crescent, That ride would take you probably 2 to 3 hours depending on how many times you stop and relax. But it is a beautiful ride. I highly recommend, if you do have the time and want to do a little eagle watching, if you can continue to take Highway 112 out to Nia Bay, which you'll have to go one way in and one way back on that particular section of Highway 112. That is also a beautiful ride, but be very cautious of idiots who cross the center lane of traffic in their four-wheeled vehicles going way too fast. That's pretty much it. I'm going to leave you with the last bit of this footage on this nice little curvy stretch of road on Highway 112. That was one of the last times I ever pulled out of the driveway, leaving our little cabin in the woods. I want to take a moment to thank Justin and Cleenan for inviting me to Port Townsend and allowing me to get these beautiful shots of me on the Suzuki B-King when I went to Washington to go pick it up. These were my very first rides on the old beast. The scenery in and around Port Townsend is just beautiful. It's a really neat little town. Some places that you might find of interest would be the co-op for a place to get more organic food while you're visiting. You can do a quick Google search. And one of my favorite places right past the apartments here on the right-hand side on a beautiful morning, having breakfast at the Bayview restaurant. And then right after that, you've got the docks and the ferry terminal and the rest of downtown Port Townsend. when we got into Port Townsend, we went into this little shopping center on the right hand side, and there is a pharmacy in one of these little spots. And back inside the pharmacy there is a little diner. And another thanks to Justin and Cleanin for treating me to a nice lunch. It was definitely more of a greasy spoon kind of diner, so if you want a little bit more of a healthy meal, better stick to the co-op. A final twist to this story, I went to go buy chain lube for King so I could ride it around safely, and wound up buying a camper at Port Angeles Power and Equipment, where I'd bought my last 3 motorcycles. Since I had taken my little Sport Track Explorer and a small utility trailer, it gave me a great excuse to turn right back around when I got to Texas and go straight back to Washington to get our new camper Trixie.